What is up, Scrub fam? I am back with an important deck profile that you all need to pay attention to. Not necessarily because this is the perfect version of this deck, or this is the deck that you should be playing, but this is a deck that you should pay attention to. Before I get started into this deck profile, because this is a really hot take, I'm going to give a shout out to my sponsor, Beard Collectibles. If you haven't already ordered your product, order it from Beard Collectibles. Alec Pastrana, best shopper on the planet. He's going to get your product out ASAP, try and get it to you on and around release day, and he's got the best prices on cases. If you're looking to buy a sealed case, it's $720 from him. So if you're looking at your sealed product, go through Bearded Collectibles and also set your pre-orders up for the next coming sets so you can make sure that you get everything you need as soon as possible. We got tons of events coming up. You want to be prepared, and you want to have access to the best cards in the game, especially with the new secret rares that keep coming out each set. You're going to want to buy a lot of sealed products so you can make sure you have those things. So anyway, let me go ahead and jump into the deck profile. So this deck is Torankusu Storm. So I basically call this a Storm deck. If you guys are familiar with the way Magic works, there's, decks called Storm Combo, which basically go off by playing a lot of spells in a single turn and try and kill the opponent through storm damage. So basically building up storm counters by casting the amount of spells per turn and then doing a burn spell that then repeats the process over and over again until the opponent is dead. And so this deck is very similar in that regard, in the fact that you are playing a ton of cards per turn and you really are amassing such a huge advantage that you're trying to basically kill your opponent in the first 2 to 3 turns of the game by how much cards you're drawing and how fast you're getting through the deck that you're playing. And so Richard Zapp posted his deck that he's been playing recently online. He posted his Hirudegarn list, which I think is really good. Hirudegarn's a really great leader with this strategy, but before he posted that, we were working together on a Trunks build. Before that, I played some games against Chris Welch, and he was using a build of Hirudegarn as well, as you guys saw in the thread that Richard was talking about. And so Chris played that deck, and then I was testing with Zapp, and then I decided to make a build with Trunks because of the fact that Bardock Progenitor and Scrambling Assault Goten is broken, and I really like Trunks' ability to just draw a supreme amount of cards. It's just built into his leader's ability, and the first few initial lists were, kind of clunky. Like, they were pretty much just, like, really pure. And then we started to add in some more flexibility. We added some variance into the slots. And then really just came up with a really fine-tuned list that kind of does everything you want it to do and has enough ratios of every card to where you can kind of get through your deck as quickly as possible, but still have some defensive options, which I really like about this deck. And the main reason why you would pick Trunks over a leader of, like, Hirudegarn is because on your front and your backside, they both have the ability to generate a ton of card advantage, and so Hirudegarn's front side does that for you, but on the back side, it's kind of a little bit different. And yeah, you get the untapped 2 on Awaken with Hirudegarn, but with Trunks, you have that really nuts turn where you'll be at 4 life. You can swing with your leader or whoever, and then you can combo with one of your super combos, draw 2 cards, and then flip, draw 2 more, and then if you want to combo something else, you can either draw the additional card that turn, with that attack, or you can use it off of another attack from one of your battle cards. So then you just generate extra cards that turn. So you're making up that difference between the untapped 2 energy and the cards that Hirudegarn gets early. Also, another reason why you play Trunks in this strategy, because of 4 My Supporter of Hope. Trunks gets the free blocker. So that's another thing that's great too, is like, if you have a turn where you can't go off, you can at least guarantee that you don't die by having Mize on the table, as well as your Bardock Will of Irons, Flying Nimbus, everything to make sure that you just stay defensive so you don't die to your opponent. So let me go ahead and explain how this deck works and what this deck tries to do. So this deck really revolves around key cards. So number 1 is being Bardock the Progenitor. Number 2, Scrambling Assault Sun Goten, which is going to be the most expensive BCC promo ever. If you guys are already started playtesting with it, this card is insane. Look at the top 3 cards of your deck, choose 1 card, put it in your hand, place the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. And I'll go into how the nuance of putting the cards on the bottom of your deck in any order in a deck like this that draws all the cards. You get to do a lot of nifty things where you get to know exactly what's in your deck, what's at the bottom of your deck. You know when to draw cards, when not to draw cards, everything like that. But essentially what you would do is you would, in your early turns, charge a yellow, play a Bardock the Progenitor here, right? Take a life to hand, so, negates the minus for playing it. Then you would swap it back to hand, play the Scrambling Assault Sun Goten. You would swing, look at the top 3, choose a card. If you don't already have an Unyielding Spirit Trunks, you would find one when you look at the top 3. You then combo the Unyielding Spirit Trunks, pop open a yellow. You then would have a flute. You flute the Goten back to hand. You play the Bardock down. You take a life. Then you swap it back to hand, play the Goten. And as you can see, you're just starting to amass cards relatively fast, and you keep putting these attacks on your opponent. So one thing is, if you're not playing against a green-based deck, you can be even more aggressive with your one-drop Bardock, because you can swing with it without having to worry about full power energy, but you really need to protect your one-drop Bardock. So if you're not playing against a green deck, then go for it. Just attack. But if you are, then I really don't like attacking with this. But in general, all you're trying to do through your early turn, whether it's your turn 1 on the draw or if it's your turn 2 on the play, is you're trying to play Bardock and stun Goten as many times as possible to pressure the opponent while you're continuing to gain cards. So every single time you play a Bardock, you're drawing a card. Every single time you swap into the Goten, you're picking up even more cards. So you're just generating more advantage. And then, of course, you have Legendary Flute, which is kind of the glue that helps tie this and keep the engine going. Another thing that I like about Trunks as the leader in this deck is you don't have to rely on just Scientist Foods for being your card drawing. If you want to play a little bit longer game with Trunks, you have the ability to activate Time's Choice Supreme Kai Tai almost every turn. And in this deck, Time's Choice really shines because, again, it gives you that effect of looking at the top 3 and then choosing 2 of those cards and placing them on the bottom of your deck. So, again, you start to know what's in your deck, what's not in your deck. And so you get those nuances of, I know that this card is here, so what are my chances of drawing X card in my deck? And at the end of the day, what you're really trying to do is just continue to thin your deck out to where you start finding your win conditions. Which your win conditions in this deck are Bardock, Will of Iron, and Scientist Fu. And all you need to do is just find 1 to 2 of the win conditions plus your leader, and you're fine. Because the amount of pressure you're putting on your opponent with Bardock and the Goten, your opponent's going to have to either spin cards to stay alive and not take damage, or they're just going to keep taking damage. And this really is difficult for a lot of decks to defend against because they basically have to give up their first 2 turns of the game to make sure that they don't die, because they can never tap out against you. The only way to really slow this deck down is to have access to Nimbus and full power, but a lot of times, a Nimbus can slow it down, but if anything, I'll just pass that turn if I need to, and we'll just continue to go from there because I can't go off that turn. But in general, what you're trying to do is just set up with Bardock, Goten, and then go from there. And so you have Legendary Flute, like I said before, which is kind of one of the cards that just makes this deck a little bit more absurd, a little bit more broken. Because whether if you're Legendary Fluting back the Goten, you don't have to. You can Legendary Flute back the Time's Choice Supreme Kai Time, so you can replay it the next turn, which is pretty insane when you do it. Because you just keep gaining that card advantage, especially because you just peaked at the top 3, you put 2 on the bottom, so you clean up your draw even more. And people look at the 4 Successor of Hope for Bardock. The reason why is because you need a Bardock as soon as possible to start the game. You need it. You have to see it. And so you play 4 Successor of Hope. Another thing that's nifty about Successor of Hope is not just the fact that it can search out your Bardock when you need it, but the fact that it can search and shuffle your deck whenever you need to put those cards that you place on the bottom of your deck back into rotation, back into the point where you can draw those cards again. So, because there's sometimes where you'll look at the top 3 and you have to choose a card, and 2 of the cards that you want are now on the bottom of your deck. Well, Successor of Hope is just a free shuffle for you. So go get a 5k combo and an extra Bardock the Progenitor, and then also shuffle your deck, and you also get to all the information, right? So you play a Successor of Hope on your first turn, you search through your deck, you can see everything that's available to you, and then as the game goes on, Successor of Hope gets even more and more powerful, because since you're not comboing with it, since it costs 0, you just play it, search your deck, see everything that's left. You can see what's left in your life if you've memorized your deck list, and then now you know everything you're doing. You know where your cards are, and then you go to shuffle. Now, all those cards that you placed on the bottom from your Scrambling Assault Sun Goten and from your Time's Choice Supreme Kai in Time are back into rotation, so you have a higher possibility of drawing them. And that's another thing. If you look at this deck, yeah, we play a lot of extra cards, 4 Flute, 4 Sensu Bean. We play 4 Successor of Hope, 3 Planets, 2 Nimbus, but 4 Successor, 3 Planet, they're tutors. Planet, you don't really ever want to have to spend the energy on it until you are ready to deploy your Bardock Will of Iron, but you still play your planets because you need to see them, and you need to see at least one. Seeing a second one is not that bad, so we play 3 copies, because if you play one late, it can search out your Goku Super Combo, it can search out an Unyielding Spirit Trunks, which is something I find myself doing pretty often in some games when I need to see an Unyielding Spirit Trunks to keep the deck going, because Planet Vegeta can search out that card, which is pretty great. And then I play 2 Nimbuses, because really the defense in this deck is just our super combos, and then we have our 4 Maya Supporter of Hopes, we have our 2 Flying Nimbus, and 3 Bardock Will of Iron. So this deck in general, as you can see, is just... it's full of gas. Every card either is drawing a card, it's doing something, or it's tutoring, or it's a finisher, or it's an enabler. And so your enablers in this deck, of course, your Sensu Bean, your 4 Unyielding Spirit Trunks, your 4 Legendary Flute. So those are going to be your enablers. This is going to allow you to do your most busted turns. This is what's going to allow you to just keep up with your momentum every single turn. Just making sure your turns last as long as possible, because that's what you want. You want your turns with this deck. If your turns are long, you're probably going to win the game because your opponent is not going to be able to defend themselves because you're going to accrue tons of resources. When I've played this deck, there's by turn 3, I am maybe at 5 to 7 cards left in deck, and I have a 20-ish card hand because of the amount of cards that I've seen. And so once that happens, you got to understand that once you have your entire deck in your hand, you're going to have your finishers. So you're going to have your Bardock Will of Iron, you're going to have your defense cards, you're going to have your Mize. And that's one thing, like I said before, that I prefer Trunks to Hirudegarn is honestly because of if I can't go off, and I know that I'm not going to be able to, and I've seen so many cards in my deck, I can just drop 3 Mize or 4 Mize if I have all 4 of them, and then now my opponent can't kill me. There's nothing they can do to kill me. There's no way they can wipe my board unless they have something that's like insane, and likelihood, there's not enough energy in play for them to be able to do anything to take the Mize off the table. And so that allows you that extra stability. But in general, this deck is incredibly powerful, it's incredibly fast, and I recommend that you just what I recommend doing first before you try and take this deck and play it on Octagon is open up an Octagon window, turn off spectators and make it a one-sided table, and just practice with the deck. So practice your turns, because a lot of the time this deck just plays itself. Because like I said, it's like a Storm combo deck. Like, you're just worried about what you're doing. You don't care about what the opponent's doing unless you know they can interact with you. If you know they can interact with you, they know they can respond and kill you, then you can start tweaking your plays. But just focus on playing this deck. It is a goldfish deck that you were just going to draw your cards, you're just going to be playing in your own little fishbowl, and you're just trying to do everything you can do to kill your opponent as quickly as possible and see every single card in your deck. If you see every card in your deck, you're going to find your Sensu Beans, you're going to find your Unyielding Spirit Trunks, you're going to find your free tutors that help you shuffle and get things back in rotation and thin your deck out as you're going forward, because every single time you success or hope, you're taking a Bardock out, hopefully, and then you're just making your deck even more thin, even more concentrated, to where now the only dead cards in your deck, legitimately, the only dead cards in your deck are 3 Planet Vegeta and 2 Nimbus. And Planet Vegeta is not even dead because it's just a 1 energy tutor. But really, the only 2 dead cards are Flying Nimbus, which, if I had to say anything, Flying Nimbus is the worst card in this deck, but it's a necessary evil because you need it in mirrors, and you need it for those turns where you know that you can't win, and you just need an extra turn to stay alive. Because like I said, all we're trying to do in this deck is we want to compress the game. We want to make the game be as tight as possible. 2 to 3 turns. We only want to give our opponent 2 to 3 turns to be able to do anything. And if they can't tap their energy, and then now you have an oppressive strategy on your opponent because your opponent can't tap their energy. Your opponent can't start to forward their own game plan because now they have to worry about everything you're doing, or you're going to kill them. Like, it is going to happen. Inevitably, they will run out of defense because of how many cards you've drawn. Like I stated, you can get up to 19, 20 card hands in this deck, and your opponent is dead to rights. And once you go off, you go off. And you just see every single card in your deck, and you just keep the train running over and over again. You're swinging with your Bardock Progenitor if you can. You're swinging with your Scrambling Assault Sun Goten and get your opponent down from 8 to 4. And you're just trying to close the door with a Bardock Will of Iron, Scientist Fuse. I don't play Furthering Destruction Champa on the list. Main reason why is because if you look at everything in this deck, so if you go over this deck list, I really wanted to minimize the amount of cards that I had to combo with or spend energy on that didn't do anything. And so I know what you're saying, like, Furthering Destruction Champa does do something, right? It gives you double strike, helps you draw a card. Yeah, but if I'm playing on the defense, it doesn't do anything for me. So I try to minimize that. So I only play the 3 Planet Vegetas and the 2 Flying Nimbus. Otherwise, only other card in the deck that doesn't do anything on my opponent's turn is Legendary Flute, which I'm 100% okay with. But playing the Furthering Destruction Champas just didn't seem worth it. I'd rather just keep up the pressure early and then close the game out with either multiple Bardocks or a Bardock and a Fu, and then call it from there. Otherwise, this has been the deck profile. I talked a lot in a really short period of time. I hope you guys get a chance to test this out. Thanks to Chris Welch, Richard Zapp, Amir Ibushi. We've all kind of been like in a hive mind on Discord talking about these things. I've talked to John Tata about this, these types of decks as well. And this is going to be something that you have to look forward to as we go forward in this format, in a flute-based format, where everything is just doing things as quickly as possible. So be prepared, build your decks, play Nimbus, Play full power energy. Green yellow is going to be a really powerful color combination. You're probably still going to want to use a blue leader though, because legendary flute enables some broken things, but you're going to want to defend yourself. So make sure you're playing the right cards to be able to do so. Be ready, and you're going to see these decks, whether if it's Trunks, whether if it's SS3 Goku, whether if it's Hirudegarn, you're going to see them. But otherwise, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this deck profile. Again, Beard Collectibles, best sponsor on the planet. If you haven't got your product yet, get your friggin' product. Otherwise, thank you so much for all your support. I truly enjoy every individual in this beautiful community, including you and you. Otherwise, thanks again. Okay, bye!